My name is Marlowe Bennett, and I still remember the exact moment I wished I could disappear. It was my sister Blythe's wedding day. The ballroom was filled with flowers, soft lights, crystal glasses, and people dressed like they had stepped out of a magazine. Everything looked perfect. Blythe had spent months planning every little detail, and she wanted the whole evening to feel expensive. I stood near the entrance, trying to stay out of the way. Then Blythe saw me. Her eyes moved from my face down to my dress. I had chosen a simple navy dress. It was modest, comfortable, and looked nice on me. I had bought it during a sale because I didn't see any reason to spend hundreds of dollars on something I would probably wear once. Blythe walked toward me with two of her friends. She looked me over and laughed. "Is that what you're wearing?" I smiled nervously. "Yes. What's wrong with it?" She looked at her friends. I told her the wedding was formal. One of them covered her mouth, trying not to laugh. Blythe touched the sleeve of my dress and said, "Marlowe, this looks like something you would wear to an office meeting." My face became hot. I looked around the room. Several people had heard her. "I thought it was fine," I said quietly. Blythe shook her head. "You always do this. You somehow make everything look cheap." That sentence hurt more than I expected. Before I could answer, our mother, Lenora, walked over. I thought she might tell Blythe to stop. Instead, she looked at my dress and laughed softly. "Oh, Marlowe, you could have tried a little harder." I swallowed. I wanted to tell them exactly what I had done for Blythe. I wanted to remind them of the phone call I received weeks earlier. I wanted to tell them about the panic in Blythe's voice when she said the wedding venue needed money immediately. But I said nothing, because I didn't want to ruin her wedding. I had promised myself that I would keep what I had done private. So I simply smiled and said, "It's okay. I'm happy to be here." Blythe walked away with her friends. I watched her disappear into the crowd, pretending everything was fine. Then I stepped into a quiet hallway and took a deep breath. My hands were shaking. It wasn't the dress that hurt. It was realizing that the same sister I had spent so much time helping could look directly at me and make me feel like I was nothing. I wiped my eyes before anyone could see. Then I returned to the ballroom. I had no idea that before the night was over, everyone in that room would learn the truth. Growing up, Blythe and I were very different. I was the child who worried about everything. I finished my homework early, saved birthday money, and thought twice before asking our parents for anything. Blythe was the opposite. She was confident and knew how to get people to say yes to her. If she wanted something, she usually found a way to get it. Our parents often called her spirited. When she made a mistake, someone usually found a reason to forgive her. I didn't hate her for it. She was my little sister, and I loved her. As we got older, the difference between us became even clearer. I built my career and learned to manage my money carefully. Blythe liked beautiful things and enjoyed spending money. She often told me that life was too short to worry about every dollar. Then she started calling me whenever she had a problem. Sometimes it was a small amount. Sometimes it wasn't. She would promise, "I'll pay you back next month." I believed her. When her car needed repairs, I helped. When she was short on rent, I helped again. When she needed money for wedding plans, I gave her what I could. I never kept a list. I never reminded her. I thought sisters were supposed to help each other. A few weeks before the wedding, I began to notice something that bothered me. Blythe kept telling me she was struggling to afford the wedding venue. Yet she was spending money on things that were not necessary. She had ordered expensive flowers. She had chosen designer decorations. She had also booked an expensive honeymoon. One evening, I asked her about it. She sighed and said, "Those things are already paid for. The venue is the problem." I didn't understand how she could spend so much on everything else and then act as if the venue bill had appeared out of nowhere. Then the situation became serious. The venue told her the remaining balance had to be paid or they would cancel the reservation. Blythe called me late that night. Her voice was shaking. "Marlowe, please. I can't lose the venue." I asked how much she needed. When she told me the amount, I sat silently for several seconds. It was far more than I had ever given her before. I could have said no. Part of me wanted to, but I knew how much the wedding meant to her. So I contacted the venue and made the payment myself. They agreed not to reveal my name. I asked them to keep it private because I didn't want praise, and I didn't want Blythe to feel like she owed me something on her wedding day. I only wanted her to have the wedding she had dreamed about. At the time, I believed keeping that secret was an act of love. I didn't know it would soon become the secret that changed everything. I tried to enjoy the reception after what happened earlier. I found a quiet seat near the back of the room and focused on the music. I told myself that the embarrassing moment would pass. For a while it did. People were busy talking, eating, and taking pictures. Blythe moved around the room, greeting guests and accepting compliments. Then a group of her friends gathered around her. They started talking about their outfits. One woman showed off a bracelet she had received as a gift. Another talked about the designer who had made her dress. Blythe smiled proudly. Then she looked across the room and saw me. I knew immediately that she was about to say something. She raised her glass and said, "Everyone looks amazing tonight." Well, almost everyone. Her friends laughed. Blythe pointed toward me. Not everyone understood the assignment. A few people laughed louder this time. I felt my stomach tighten. I looked down at my plate and tried to ignore them. Then my mother joined in. She leaned toward me and said, "Marlo, you should be grateful you were invited. This isn't about you." I looked at her. I couldn't believe she had said that. I had come because Blythe was my sister. I hadn't asked for attention. I hadn't complained about the wedding. I hadn't said one negative thing about her dress, her decorations, or her choices. I had simply shown up. Then Tessa Rowland, Blythe's maid of honor, walked over. She looked at my dress again. "Seriously, Marlo," she said. "Did you get that at a thrift store?" The people around us became quiet. For a second, I wanted to answer. I wanted to tell them how much I had done behind the scenes. I wanted to ask Blythe why she was treating me this way after everything. But I knew that would only turn the night into a bigger fight. So I looked at Blythe. She was waiting for me to react. Instead, I gave her a small smile. "I'm happy you're happy." Her expression changed. She had expected me to cry. Maybe she expected me to yell. I gave her neither. I stood up and walked away. I went through a side door and found a quiet hallway near the venue office. I needed a few minutes alone. A moment later, Graham Vale, the venue manager, came toward me. He looked concerned. "You all right?" I nodded. He lowered his voice. "I just want you to know that the wedding would not have happened without your help." I looked at him and said, "Please don't say anything." "I won't," he promised. "The payment records are sealed under the agreement." I nodded again. "Thank you." Graham walked away. I stood there alone for a moment, listening to the music coming from the ballroom. Then I wiped my eyes and went back inside. I had no idea that the secret I was protecting would soon stop being a secret. 3 weeks before the wedding, my phone rang late at night. It was Blythe. The moment I answered, I heard her crying. "Marlo, I don't know what to do." I sat up in bed. "What happened?" "The venue called me. They said they need the rest of the money within 48 hours. I was quiet. "How much?" She told me. I stared at the wall. $42,000. For a moment, I thought she was joking. "You don't have it?" "No," she whispered. I thought I could make it work. I already knew she had been spending heavily on the wedding, but hearing the amount still shocked me. "Blythe, you still owe me money." "I know." She had already borrowed more than $18,000 from me over the years. Some of it was supposed to come back quickly. It never did. I rubbed my forehead. "Why didn't you tell me earlier?" I was embarrassed. I didn't answer. Then she started crying harder. "Please, Marlo. I just want one day where everything is perfect." Those words stayed with me. I knew I could refuse. I also knew that if the venue canceled, Blythe would be crushed. I opened my laptop and looked at my business investment account. I had money saved there for a future project. Taking $42,000 out would not destroy me, but it would set my plans back. I sat there for several minutes. Then I made the payment. The venue sent me a formal receipt confirming that I had covered the remaining balance. I asked them not to mention my name to anyone. Blythe called me the next morning. "You saved me," she said. "You'll pay me back when you can," I told her. "I promise." That was all I needed to hear. I never expected a thank you during the wedding. I didn't need one. But standing in that hallway after being mocked for my dress, I suddenly remembered everything. The $42,000, the late-night phone call, the promise, and the receipt sitting safely in my record. I realized Blythe had not forgotten the money. She simply didn't want anyone to know where it had come from. Maybe she wanted everyone to believe she had paid for her perfect wedding herself. Maybe admitting that I had rescued her would have embarrassed her. Either way, I wasn't going to argue with her. I wasn't going to chase her around the ballroom demanding respect. I had already done enough. If the truth ever came out, it would not come from me screaming about it. It would come from the records. I took one last breath and returned to the reception. Blythe was smiling again, surrounded by guests. She looked completely comfortable. I looked at her and wondered how long that comfort would last once the truth was no longer hidden. After dinner, the music stopped for a moment. The wedding coordinator stepped onto the small stage and asked everyone to stay seated. She explained that the venue was holding a charity auction as part of its yearly fundraiser. Some of the money would go to local families who needed help. People seemed interested. Then a tall man in a dark suit walked onto the stage. "My name is Hollis Crane," he said. "I'll be your auctioneer tonight." A few guests clapped. Hollis started with simple items. The first was a signed football helmet. A man near the front made the winning bid. Next came a weekend stay at a cabin. Then there was a private dinner for 6 at a local restaurant. The room became lively again. People laughed and raised their bidding cards. I stayed in my seat and watched. Blythe was sitting near the front with her husband, smiling as guests praised the wedding. Then Hollis paused. He looked toward the wedding coordinator. She nodded. Hollis picked up another card. "We have one final item tonight," he said. People became quiet. "This is a special anniversary package donated by the owner of this venue." He explained that the package included a private dinner, a weekend stay, and several other services for the couple's first anniversary. Blythe smiled. Her husband leaned toward her. Then Hollis added something I wasn't expecting. Before we begin, we'd also like to recognize someone who made this wedding possible during a difficult time. The room became very quiet. I felt my heart stop for a second. Blythe looked confused. Hollis continued. Earlier, the final balance for this wedding was paid in full by someone who stepped forward when the venue was at risk of losing the reservation. Blythe turned toward the coordinator. "What is he talking about?" she whispered. Her husband looked at her. I stayed completely still. Hollis explained that the venue normally kept payment information private. "But tonight is different," he said. "The couple agreed to take part in our fundraiser, and they gave us permission to recognize the person who made that final payment." My stomach tightened. I had never agreed to be recognized, but I understood what had happened. The permission had come from the couple. Hollis looked across the room. Then his eyes stopped on me. "Ladies and gentlemen, we'd like to thank Marlo Bennett." For a moment, nobody moved. Then dozens of faces turned in my direction. I felt every eye in the room. Blythe slowly turned around. Her smile was gone. She stared at me as if she had never seen me before. Her husband looked from her to me. My mother sat frozen in her chair. Tessa's face had gone pale. I didn't stand. I didn't say anything. I simply looked at Blythe. She knew. She remembered the phone call. She remembered asking me for help. And now everyone else was beginning to understand. Hollis lifted his microphone again. The final payment was $42,000. A shocked murmur moved through the room. Blythe's face changed completely. For the first time that night, she had nothing to say. Nobody spoke for several seconds. The room felt completely different. Hollis stood on the stage with the microphone in his hand, while everyone stared at me. Then the whisper started. 42,000? She paid that. I thought the bride's family covered the wedding. I could hear people talking from different tables. My mother looked shocked. She kept staring at me as if she was trying to understand what she had just heard. Tessa lowered her head. I could tell she remembered what she had said about my dress. Blythe stood suddenly. She walked toward me with a confused look on her face. "Marlo, wait." I didn't move. "There has to be some mistake," she said. "There isn't." Her voice became quieter. "What are you talking about?" I reached into my purse and pulled out my phone. I had saved the payment confirmation because I knew it was important. I showed it to her. Her eyes moved across the screen. The amount was clearly there. $42,000. Her face went pale. "I thought you only helped with the paperwork," she said. I looked at her. "Blythe, you called me that night." She said nothing. "You told me the venue would cancel the wedding if the balance wasn't paid." Her lips parted, but no words came out. "You asked me to help," I continued. She looked around the room. People were watching us. Then she whispered, "I didn't know it would be announced." That sentence told me everything. She knew. She had always known. She had simply chosen not to mention it. She wanted everyone to believe the wedding had been paid for without my help. I put my phone away. "I never asked you to announce it," I said. Hollis stepped forward again. "There is one detail I'd like to clarify." Blythe looked at him. Hollis explained that the venue records showed the entire outstanding balance had been paid by me. He also explained that the wedding records listed the venue as one of Blythe's major wedding expenses. A few guests looked at Blythe. Someone near the back whispered, "So she wasn't even paying for it?" Blythe quickly said, "That's not fair." Her husband looked uncomfortable. I could see that he was starting to understand how much had been hidden from him too. My mother finally spoke. "Marlo, why didn't you tell us?" I looked at her. "Because I didn't do it for attention." The room became quiet again. I looked toward Blythe. She had spent the evening making me feel ashamed of a dress that cost me very little. Now everyone knew what I had done for her. I didn't feel proud. I didn't feel victorious. I only felt tired. Blythe had always been good at controlling what people believed about her. But that night, she couldn't change the record. She couldn't laugh it away. And she couldn't make me look small anymore. The room stayed quiet after Hollis finished speaking. Blythe looked at me, then at our mother. Lenora finally stood. "Marlo, you should have told us you were helping her." I shook my head. There were many times I helped her. I never wanted anyone to know. Blythe looked confused. "What do you mean many times?" I took a breath. The 42,000 wasn't the first time. Her face changed. I explained that over the years, I had paid for an apartment deposit when she was short on money. I had covered medical bills when she was worried about a sudden expense. I had even paid for emergency car repairs when she needed her car for work. I never brought those things up. I never expected praise. They were things I did because she was my sister. Lenora looked at me. "That's what family does," she said. I looked at her. "Yes, family helps each other." Then I looked at Blythe. "But helping someone doesn't mean they have the right to humiliate you." Blythe looked down. Nobody laughed anymore. The same people who had watched her make jokes about my dress were now looking at me differently. I didn't want their sympathy. I didn't want their attention. I only wanted the truth to be understood. Blythe pulled me aside. Her voice was low. Marlo, please don't do this tonight. I'm not doing anything. You're ruining my wedding. I looked at her carefully. I didn't ruin your wedding, Blythe. She stared at me. You did that when you decided to embarrass me in front of everyone. Her eyes filled with tears. You wanted this to happen. No. You knew they were going to announce it. I didn't. She shook her head. This is revenge. I felt something inside me break. No, Blythe. If I wanted revenge, I would have told everyone weeks ago. I kept your secret. She didn't answer. I pointed toward the stage. The auction was arranged by the venue. Hollis made the announcement. I had nothing to do with it. She wiped her face. So what do you want? I thought about it. I could have demanded my money back right there. I could have embarrassed her in front of every guest. But I didn't. I don't want anything tonight. She looked surprised. I don't want you to pay me back in front of everyone. I don't want another argument. Then what do you want? I want you to understand that things between us have changed. I walked toward the exit. Outside, the cold air hit my face. I finally let myself cry. The money wasn't what hurt the most. It wasn't the dress either. What broke my heart was realizing that my own sister cared more about looking perfect than caring about the person who had helped her. I stood there alone and cried until I could breathe again. Then I wiped my face. For the first time that night, I felt ready to choose myself. I stood outside the ballroom for a few minutes, trying to calm myself. I had already said everything I needed to say. Then I heard the door open behind me. It was Blythe. She came outside alone. Marlo, please. I didn't turn around right away. She walked closer. Please don't leave. I looked at her. I think I should. You're my sister. I know. She wiped her eyes. I don't want people to remember my wedding like this. I took a slow breath. Blythe, I didn't create this. You knew they were going to say your name. I didn't. She stared at me. I didn't arrange the auction. I didn't ask Hollis to make that announcement. The venue did. But you could have stopped it. I didn't know it was coming. She looked away. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then she said something that made my heart sink. You wanted this. I looked at her in disbelief. You think I wanted everyone to find out? You wanted revenge. No. My voice was calm, but I could feel the hurt inside me. If I wanted revenge, I could have told everyone what happened before your wedding. I could have told our mother. I could have told your husband. I could have told every guest. She became quiet, but I didn't. I looked through the glass doors at the reception. People were still sitting at their tables. The flowers were still beautiful. The music had started again. Everything looked almost normal, but nothing felt normal to me anymore. Blythe asked, Then what do you want? Nothing tonight. She frowned. You don't want the money? Not tonight. I can pay you back. We can talk about that another time. She looked relieved for only a second. Then I added, But money isn't going to fix this. Her face fell. I don't understand. I don't expect you to. I had spent years thinking that if I helped Blythe enough, she would eventually understand how much I cared about her. Now I knew that wasn't how it worked. I can't pretend everything is fine anymore, I told her. So we're done. I didn't say that. She waited. Our relationship has changed, I said. I need distance. I need time. And I need to stop being the person you call whenever something goes wrong. She started crying. I felt tears in my own eyes, but I didn't change my mind. I hope you're happy, Blythe. Then I walked away. I didn't wait for another argument. I didn't want to hear another excuse. I got into my car and closed the door. The moment I was alone, I broke down. I covered my face and cried. It wasn't because of the money. It wasn't because everyone knew. It was because my sister had looked at me, knowing everything I had done, and still decided that my dress was more important than my feeling. That was the part one couldn't forget. I started the car and drove home. For the first time, I wasn't running away from my sister. I was finally walking away from the way she had treated me. The weeks after the wedding were quiet. I didn't call Blythe. She didn't call me either. At first, I thought that was a good thing. Then one afternoon, I received an email from her. It was a repayment plan. She had written down the amount she owed me and divided it into monthly payments. For the first time, I saw everything clearly. I had spent years making excuses for her. I had told myself that she was struggling. I had told myself that family came first. But now I understood that helping her had become a habit. I replied with one simple message. I agree to the plan. Please make each payment on time. There would be no more promises without action. A few days later, I learned that Blythe's husband had finally seen the full wedding expenses. He had known the wedding was expensive, but he hadn't known how much had been spent on decorations, flowers, the honeymoon, and other things. He also learned that I had paid the final venue balance. Their marriage was now dealing with the pressure that had been hidden before the wedding. I didn't feel happy about that. I didn't want their marriage to fail. I simply stopped protecting Blythe from the results of her choices. Then my mother called. Her first words were not an apology. You embarrassed the family. I closed my eyes. Mom, I didn't announce the payment. I know, but you should have handled it privately. I did. She became quiet. I never told anyone. I didn't even tell you. There was silence on the phone. Then she said something I never expected. I was wrong. I didn't speak. I shouldn't have laughed at your dress, she continued. And I shouldn't have told you to be grateful for being invited. My eyes filled with tears. Thank you for saying that. It didn't erase what happened, but it mattered. After that, I started changing small things in my own life. I stopped buying expensive gifts for people who barely noticed them. I stopped paying bills for relatives who always promised to repay me later. When someone asked me for money, I no longer felt guilty for saying no. At first, saying no felt strange. I had spent so many years believing that being a good sister meant fixing problems. Now I understood that it was possible to love someone without rescuing. Blythe continued making her payments. We spoke occasionally, but things were different. There was distance between us. Maybe that distance would disappear one day. Maybe it wouldn't. I no longer tried to control the outcome. My revenge wasn't seeing Blythe struggle. It wasn't making her feel ashamed. It wasn't taking anything away from her. My revenge was much quieter. I stopped needing her approval. I stopped measuring myself against her. And I stopped believing that my worth depended on how expensive my clothes looked. The woman who had walked into that wedding feeling small was slowly becoming someone who no longer needed anyone else to tell her that she mattered. Several months later, my family gathered for my mother's birthday. I almost didn't go. Things with Blythe were still different. We were speaking again, but carefully. There were no long talks, and no pretending that everything had gone back to normal. Still, I decided to attend. That morning, I opened my closet and saw the navy dress. The same dress from Blythe's wedding. I smiled. Then I put it on. When I arrived at my mother's house, everyone was already there. Blythe was standing in the kitchen when she noticed me. Her eyes moved to my dress. She became quiet. You're wearing that dress? I looked down at it. Yes. She didn't know what to say. My mother noticed the dress too. I remember that one, she said softly. I smiled. So do I. Later, Blythe found me sitting alone on the back porch. She sat beside me. For a while, neither of us spoke. Then she said, "Why did you keep it?" I looked at the dress. Because it reminds me of something important. What? The night I finally understood that I can't let other people decide what I... She looked down. I was horrible to you. I didn't answer. I've thought about it a lot, she continued. I was jealous of you. I turned toward her. She took a deep breath. You were always responsible. You had your life together. People trusted you. I think I was scared that people would see that I wasn't as perfect as I pretended to be. Her voice became quiet. So I made you feel small because it made me feel bigger. That was the most honest thing she had ever said to me. I shouldn't have done it, she said. I'm sorry. I believed that she was sorry. But forgiveness wasn't as simple as saying everything was okay. I forgive you, I told her. She looked at me. But things won't go back to how they were. She nodded slowly. I understand. I can love you and still have boundaries. I know. We sat quietly for another minute. There was no perfect ending. There was no sudden return to the way things had been when we were children. But there was honesty. And for me, that was enough. I looked down at my navy dress. Once, Blythe had made me feel embarrassed because she thought it looked cheap. Now I saw it differently. That dress had become a reminder of the night I stopped chasing approval. I didn't need expensive clothes to prove that I mattered. I didn't need a perfect family to feel complete. And I didn't need anyone to tell me that I was worthy. The best revenge was never making Blythe feel poor or embarrassed. It was refusing to become bitter. It was building a life where I could say no without guilt. It was knowing my value even when someone else refused to see it. That navy dress had cost me very little, but what it came to represent was priceless. I had walked away from that wedding with my dignity. Months later, I realized I had gained something even better. I had finally learned how to choose myself.